Hello there, you're listening to the Box Office Show. I'm Dylan Johnson, and there is no Ryan Hill yet again as he's filming his feature film, Painted Faces, right now. However, I will be talking about the box office numbers from last weekend and our box office predictions for this upcoming weekend, and I will also be doing a review of George Miller's high-octane Fury Road prequel, Furiosa. The main news for the week is that the Cannes Film Festival finalized, it wrapped up, and we have some winners to announce for their awards ceremony. The Palme d'Or, which is kind of like the Cannes Film Festival Best Picture, went to Sean Baker's Nora. Of course, Sean Baker is known for The Florida Project and for Red Rocket and Tangerine. And of those movies, I've only seen The Florida Project, which we talked about on the last show if you want to go and listen to it. And I love that movie. Ryan loves that movie. It's very dear to our hearts as native Floridians, so we are big fans of Sean Baker. However, if you are a fan of the show and if you've been listening along, you will know that Ryan has a little bit of a disdain for Red Rocket specifically. You'd have to go back and listen to him or email us for his take because I don't want to put words in his mouth. But from what I know, it is a movie that he does not enjoy. So for Ryan, Sean Baker's a bit of a mixed bag. For me, the only movie I've seen, I've loved. And based on what I've heard Anora is about, I'm interested. I'm excited to check it out. So I will be absolutely sure to take a look at that whenever it gets a wider release. Also, other winners. The Best Director went to Miguel Gomez for Grand Tour. Best Performance by an Actor went to Jesse Plemons for Kinds of Kindness, directed by Yorgos Lanthimos, which I'm very excited for. It's one of my most anticipated movies of the year, and I'm a big Jesse Plemons fan, and I'm very excited to see him get a lot more recognition. I think that's awesome for him. I think it's awesome for Yorgos Lanthimos, and I'm looking forward to that movie greatly. And interestingly, Best Performance by an Actress went to four different women from the movie Emilia Perez, directed by Jacques Audiard. It went to Adriana Paz, Zoe Saldana, Carla Sofia Gascon, and Selena Gomez. All together won the Best Performance by an Actress. I don't know much about the movie. I suppose they're all one big ensemble piece, and giving it to one as opposed to all four was not quite accreditive, I suppose. So they gave it to all four actresses, which I think is interesting. And Best Screenplay went to The Substance, written by Coralie Fargier. I don't know much about this movie. I know it's a Demi Moore movie, and based on what I've read about it, it seems kind of sci-fi, kind of interesting. I will for sure be checking this out. Now we can talk about the box office numbers from our past weekend, the Memorial Day weekend, May 24th, all the way to the 27th. I'm going to do all 4 days here. Coming in first place, no surprise to anybody, Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. But here's the catch. It made $32.3 million, which was under what I had predicted, and is very, very low, which is horrible. And it only made a little over $1 million more than the number 2 movie, which was the Garfield movie, which also premiered this weekend. It made $31.2 million, just barely under Furiosa, which I think is disappointing for both movies, but especially Furiosa. It had a giant budget, and it needed to make a lot more money, especially in the opening weekend. It's a huge bummer. Very disappointing. The original didn't make that much money in the first place. This one is following in its footsteps, but even worse. And the Garfield movie is in tow. In third place was John Krasinski's If with $22.3 million. Fourth place was Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes with 17.6. The Fall Guy with 7.9 million in fifth place. Sixth place was The Strangers with Chapter 1 with 7 million. Seventh place, another new movie for the past weekend, Sight with 3.7 million. That was belonging to Angel Studio, which is one of the Christian film production companies. Number 8 was Challengers with 1.8 million. Number 9, Back to Black with 1.4 million. And number 10, Babes with 1.3 million. Overall, not a very high earning weekend, especially as far as Memorial Day weekends go. Fairly disappointing, especially for Furiosa. And I I estimate, and I guess we're kind of leaning into our box office predictions for the next weekend, which would be May 31st to June 2nd. I predict that Garfield is going to have a stronger hold than Furiosa. I think Furiosa, much like superhero franchise and other kinds of franchises, is going to be very front loaded, as opposed to Garfield, which is an animated movie, and children's animated movies typically have longer legs and will have less of a drop. I have a feeling Garfield will overtake Furiosa and be the number one movie of next weekend. There isn't really any big new releases coming out for the next weekend, so I suppose we can just skip over new releases for now. And now we can get into our main topic of discussion. And by we, I mean me, because Ryan is not here yet again. I'm going to be talking about Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. Now, I watched the first Fury Road back in 2016. I want to say it was probably the year after it came out, and I watched it at home. I never got to see it in theaters because I just didn't really know about it that much when it was coming out. I knew it was nominated for a bunch of Oscars, and I watched the Oscars that year like I always do, and I watched it win a bunch of Oscars. I think it won 6. And I thought, well, this action movie that is supposed to be like the pinnacle of action, if it's winning this many awards, it must be incredible. So I suppose I should give it a shot. And so I rented it or bought a cheap DVD version of it. I'm not sure. And I watched it at home and I was blown away. Absolutely blown away. Fury Road is one of the greatest action movies ever made. I know Ryan would agree with me if he was here. I think the way that they shape those action sequences, how they keep the momentum going so strongly, the way that the editing works that Margaret Sixel did with determining where the eye is going to follow the action with different cuts. I think that's all masterful. I think the production design and the design of the vehicles are incredible. The stunt work, we talk about stunts a lot with the Fall Guy coming out and trying to bring stunt men and stunt women to the forefront of attention because of the effort and hard work that they do. This movie in particular has some of the greatest stunt work I have ever seen. It is absolutely incredible. The car work that's being done here, all of the jumps they do in the motorcycles, all the car crashes they do, all the work they do, just jumping between vehicles. I mean, it is absolutely insane. The explosions, the gunfights, all of the special effects with the blood work that's being done, all of the CGI and how it meshes, it looks fantastic. And then on top of all of that, the world itself that George Miller is building here is so extraordinary and well thought out. There are so many aspects in here that they don't clue you in on. I just think it is like something that has to unfold in front of you and you're not going to understand it right away and you just have to kind of keep going to fully understand it. I think that's what makes it so magical, incredible is just trying to agree to be along for the ride and to just experience that thrilling adventure with the characters as it's going on and learn more as they learn more. That's what makes it so exciting for me. I'm not going in knowing anything about Mad Max. I have not seen the original 3. I think I've seen the first one a long time ago, but I never watched Road Warrior or Thunderdome. So I don't know really anything about those two movies and barely anything at all about the first one. I very hardly remember it. But this Fury Road is just so fantastic. It stands out as just so incredible. It's this standalone movie to me in my mind. It's the standalone movie that can stand on its own, even if you don't know the Mad Max trilogy as I don't, and you don't keep up with it. You can still watch this movie, go in and have a fantastic time. Fast forward to a week ago, I am getting ready to go see Furiosa. I'm excited. I'm pumped. Furiosa, again, one of my favorite movies. Top like 3 favorite action movies, along with like T2 and Aliens, the sequel. Like one of the great action movies. So I'm pumped to see like awesome, stellar action. And I go to the theater and I watch Furiosa, the whole thing, and I come out. And in order to do this spoiler free, I will say I was let down a little bit. I would say I was let down like a decent amount, more than I wish I had been let down. I was going into it having seen the trailers and having been hyped up so much that this was one of the top 5 movies I think I was most anticipated for this year. I was very, very excited, and I was just simply let down. which is upsetting. There were aspects of it that I thought were really great that I'll get into, but overall, I walked away feeling like I didn't need this movie to really exist. And I suppose now is as good a time as any to lean into the spoiler talk relating to this movie. So if you haven't seen Furiosa Mad Max Saga, please go to the theaters or rent it on demand if it's on demand by now, by the time you're seeing it, and watch it. And then come back and hear me talk about it. I don't know. I'm going into this movie and I'm thinking it's going to be this, as I said in the intro, this high octane apocalyptic prequel to Fury Road with all this great action in it and this great character of Furiosa that we know so well from Fury Road that we get to learn more. We get to learn her whole backstory, and I'm very pumped going into it. And I think I made a mistake in going to a regular theater. I waited too long to see it, and it was out of regular theaters. And so I didn't get to see it in IMAX or Dolby, and I really wanted to see it in Dolby. And so I think that was already a mistake. But I feel like a great action movie would be good on a TV screen, on a phone screen, really. A great action movie can exist anywhere. You shouldn't have to see it in the most premium theater possible. And I think from the get-go, the action in this movie is much fewer than Mad Max Fury Road, which I think going into this, I expected a little bit, because Fury Road is a nonstop story, a very linear story, and a very short story in terms of like time span. It takes place over like 2 days. And so it is very much like go time. You go. It is going and you're going with it. And it is a nonstop car chase the entire time. So the action is the entire movie except for like 20 minutes of dialogue sparsed in between, but mostly just action straight up. And not many action movies are like that. So I was expecting it to slow down a little bit going into it. I did not expect it to slow down as much as it did. But I would say that that wasn't as much of a problem as some other things. I think I'm okay with watching a more slowed down version of like this Fury Road world. I think that's what the original Mad Maxes are more like. It's more caring about the characters and trying to build out the world that you're in, as opposed to just trying to create nonstop action. So I would be okay with a slowed down version of a Fury Road, which is pacing wise what I got. So pacing wasn't the biggest issue. It just was a little bit of a letdown, but seeing what they were trying to do, I understand how, like, why they made that choice script wise, and I'm not like bothered by it. I do have a problem with the quality of the action scenes that were in it that we did get to see. Like, there are already not that many action scenes. I really wanted the action to pick up. I think the sequence where Furiosa, the stowaway chapter, if you watch the movie, you know that they're chapter titles, and one of the chapters is the stowaway, when Furiosa is trying to stow away and run away from the Citadel. And that bit, I think, was a good action sequence. I think parts of Dementis and his gang riding in their motorbikes was very good. I think the chase, I think the Bullet Farm fight wasn't great, but the chase after the Bullet Farm fight and the aftermath of that was. I suppose I think the best way to go about this is if I try and just go chronologically through the story. So starting the beginning, we have Furiosa, and she is picking a peach, and she's in the green place that we know so well from Fury Road, from just namesake. We know that she's from this green place and that she's taken from it going into it. And we see immediately that she is taken. She goes to try and cut the brake lines, or the gas lines, I mean, on the bikes that have discovered the green place, and she just gets taken immediately. So right off the bat, we are not really given backstory as to Furiosa's background, like what the green place is, who these people are. And it feels like Fury Road in that regard, in the sense that we are not given a lot of information going forward. We just know that the green place is this a place of spoils in in this wasteland territory, and the people that live there do not want it getting out that this place exists because others will come and ruin it, of course. So that's the only information we're given. We don't know much else about their community, which honestly I think is for the best because the story isn't really about that. It's about her trying to get home, but it's not really about her home. So I think that's fine. I think I was still on board through the whole bike chase where her mother is chasing after Furiosa. I thought that was all like it was slow paced, but it was still kind of exciting. I just wish it had ramped up a little bit at certain points, but it was going, And I was into it. I was going along with it. The bike riders make it all the way back to Dementis's gang, and they're getting picked off one by one, which is exciting. Uh, and then we're learning more about these bikers as we meet more and more characters as they're coming in. And then finally, we get to see Chris Hemsworth's Dementis, who, right off the bat, is a shining star in this movie that I would call a disappointment. Chris Hemsworth is fantastic. And from the first scene he's in, I think is stealing the show 100%. Every scene he's in, I think he steals the show. And so I think a big slight against this movie is that there's not enough Chris Hemsworth, which I'll get into later. But just to say completely, I love Chris Hemsworth in this movie. I think he's absolutely fantastic. And I was let down by his performance in Thor: Love and Thunder, and I was a little bit uh, uh, upset at the whole film as a whole, and then as well as his take on what Thor would be like in this post Endgame world. Felt very cartoonish and out of place. But this role as Dementis has won me over again. And I think Chris Hemsworth is, again, a fantastic actor, and this just proves it. Absolutely. 100% kills it in this movie. But we get Furiosa taken there. Dementis is there. They are interrogating her, trying to figure out where the green place is. She's not willing to give it up. And they try to like attack her with dogs or something. And Dementis tries to show her mercy and give her a place to stay, and give her food and the good water, the good food, so that she can sort of like good cop it. He can good cop it for her, and she can maybe in the next day sort of open up. And then while she's captive, her mother comes and frees her, and they run. And as they are running, the Dementis' gang is chasing after them. They get to the cave that they go through the middle of, and the mother posts up with a gun and tells Furiosa to run and to get away and to not turn back. And so Furiosa drives away. The mother starts shooting after her, which I think is also a very good sequence. I think Dementis' gang going through the crack and getting taken one by one, they start to flank around the sides. I think that was all very exciting and well done with the sandstorm that's going on all around them. Very, very good looking, very good looking, very, very well shot, very well done. I'm still on board at this point, still like intrigued and interested in seeing where it's going. Nothing has gone downhill so far. And we get the part where Dementis and the God, what is his name? The guy with he's the guy who's got the octopus flying thing, and he's got the full black face mask, whatever his name is. He kills Furiosa's mother in a very brutal way, which I thought was awesome. And Furiosa has to watch it because she tries to run back to save her and gets taken. I guess I suppose I understand why she goes back. I wish there had been more of a. I guess I don't really have a complaint. I think it's fine. Yeah, Furiosa goes back and she's taken by Dementis and the gang, and he knows that she knows where the green place is, and he's trying to find it. And they kill the mother because she's not saying anything, and she's never going to say anything. And they're putting all their eggs in the basket of Furiosa trying to find this place. We get a bit of a sequence where Dementis is chasing after these people, and Furiosa is locked in a cage with his teddy bear, which I think is very cute and funny. And we see Dementis recruiting people very brutally, doing the I don't know what it's called, but I've only seen it done with horses, where you have the horses strung up to each limb, and the horses you shoot a gun off, and the horses run off and rip the guy apart. But in the world of the apocalypse, of course, there are no horses except for the green place, so they're using motorcycles, which I think is just as cool. And there are 20 people, and there are only 4 motorcycles, so groups of 4 have to fight each other, which is also kind of badass. So far, still on board. loving Dementis, loving the whole gang being together, loving the brutality of it, loving learning about like living in the wasteland on a day-to-day basis and trying to survive out there and what it's like with these like roaming gangs and whatnot. I'm intrigued by all of this and very interested, and I'm still on board. It still looks good. The action is still far in between, but when it is there, I'm interested in it and I'm still invested, still going, still strong. The next bit that happens is they come across a war boy. Already, bing, light goes off. We are crossing into Fury Road now. Even more hyped, even more excited. I was kind of wishing it would come later because I was still enjoying the Furiosa aspect of it, learning more about her backstory with Dementis. But I was like, hey, any chance to get to the Citadel and see all of those great characters again. Very excited to see that. So they follow the war boy back to the Citadel. We get to see a Morton Joe again, who unfortunately the original actor passed away, so it's a new actor playing the role of a much younger Morton Joe, but still as powerful and threatening as ever, still cool looking, absolutely incredible. The people leader is there, Rictus is there, and his brother, what is his name? Is it Dickus? It's something stupid. I don't know, but Rictus's brother is there, who is not a character in Fury Road, and I will come back to that later. His brother is not in Fury Road. He is in Furiosa. And his conclusion in Furiosa doesn't make sense to me, but we will get there. The Dementis gang shows up. They threaten all of the Citadel. They say, cast down your leaders. I will lead you. I'm Dementis. Hear me roar. And then the people leader says, pick a war boy. They pick a war boy. The random war boy does the witness me and takes two of those spears from the first movie and does this badass thing where he rides down a zip line and then jumps off and just bombs onto Dementis's people, like suicide bombs. And it's awesome. And then all of the war boys start doing it and all hell breaks loose. And it's awesome. And I loved it. That is what I wanted. So now I'm on like a hype train of this is a good movie. I'm enjoying this thoroughly. This is really good. Dementis is a good character. He's like a silly man who is not very wise and not very good, but he is determined to seek greatness in this wasteland. He is driven by his ego. He is very intriguing, and he is just not winning. And I'm on his side partially because I want to see this very charismatic leader be given power just to see what happens when he's given that power. So we cut to the next portion of the movie where they go and they take over Gastown. And this is also another sequence that I think it's not even really an action sequence, but I do think the action is good, and I do think the character choices are good. They take over a war rig. They put white mud all over their bodies. Also the shot of Dementis like shooting off the flare, and the war rig is just on Fury Road, and all of the motorcycles slowly come out of the hills and descend onto Fury Road to surround it and take it. It's like, to me, is like reminiscent of Lawrence of Arabia, of like the horses coming over the hill and trying to charge the caravans and the train. That was fantastic. Again, highly on board, still having a good time. They paint themselves white to look like war boys. They are being chased by Dementis's gang as like a ruse to get into Gastown, but they're not buying it because nobody's getting hurt. Nothing's really happening. Everybody's missing. Nobody's dying. So Dementis just starts shooting the guys on the war rig that are his own men, just in disguise. Starts shooting them, which is a crazy move to make, but it says a lot about his character. He's ruthless. He wants to get where he wants to get to. He's trying to do the best that he can. So he's just shooting these guys and taking them out that are his own men. And it's awesome. Again, really on board, having a great time. And they get into Gastown. They take over Gastown. And that brings us to the big meeting where Dementis shows up. He's got whoever the leader of Gastown is, I don't remember his name. He's got him in like a saw trap almost, where he has a big drill like a big drill strapped around his head, and Dementus is holding the weight back so the drill doesn't pierce through his head. And he's talking about wanting to take over Gastown. He has a bomb as well, so if they try to kill him, everybody will just fucking explode. And he tries to hand off the guy to Rictus's brother, or Rictus, one of the two of them, and he doesn't get a firm grip, so he just lets go of the drill and just stabs the Gastown guy through the head. That part I just don't understand. What is the purpose of the drill? Why is he holding the weight? There is like no threat to that. I feel like if he made someone else hold the weight, there would be more threat to it. I guess it's what he did in the end, and they just let go. But they let go immediately. If he had like forced him to hold the weight and he was continuing to hold the weight, like if Rick just kept holding it for a while in the scene and then let go, that would be a little more exciting. But he lets go immediately, and then also for some reason it's strapped to Dementus's nipples. So when it rips through, it just rips off Chris Hemsworth's nipples. I don't know why. What is is it to encourage him not to let go, I guess, because he doesn't want his nipples ripped off? I don't I don't really understand the creation of that trap. I don't get it at all. But anyway, they negotiate and they agree that Dementus can now run Gastown and that they will trade Guzzolene. Which, why do they call it Guzzolene if it's Gastown? They already know to call it gas, but they call it I don't know. That's just it's a nitpicky thing. It doesn't really matter. They agree to trade Guzzolene for food, and I believe, if I'm correct, they say they're going to do it every 10 days. Every 10 days, a war rig will come with food, and they will trade for Guzzolene. That's important. Remember, 10 days. They make that agreement, and part of the agreement is that Morton Joe gets to keep Furiosa, who is a person unaffected by the radiation of the wasteland, that he wants to have as one of his brides when she grows up, which is really gross and really crazy backstory for Furiosa that I didn't think was there. And he also gets to keep the organ mechanic guy, who we see in Fury Road later on, of course. And then Dementus, it's implied that Rictus is like interested in Furiosa in some way or another, and he tries to take her, but she has already cut off her hair and is wearing it as a wig instead of actually hair in her skull. And so when he goes to touch her hair again, like he did earlier in the movie, she can run away because it's just a wig. And then she escapes. And this tree grows and time jump. Up until this point, on board, only little weird reservation about like the drill trap thing. Didn't really understand that. And also was looking forward to more of Dementus like politicking with the Citadel crew and like the politics behind their whole organization and the way they run the wasteland. A desire to see more of that and not getting it was a little upsetting. But of course, it's the Furiosa movie. This is all just background to her story, which is fine. I understand that. It's just that was the most intriguing part to this point, and I was interested in it. And one last thing before I move on to the next half of the movie. There is a portion, there's a historian who's covered in tattoos, and so he has a tattoo gun, and Furiosa takes the tattoo gun and she tattoos her arm with the stars to be able to trace her way back to the green place if she ever needs to. It is a star map on her arm that is designed to lead back to the green place. Okay. So now we know important facts to remember. Stars on her arm to lead back to the green place. Her left arm that we know she loses later on because in Fury Road she does not have that arm. Other important part: the gas rig will go between Gastown. The war rig will go between Gastown and the Citadel every 10 days. 10 days. That is important. Now, there is a time jump here, and I don't know. I'm pretty sure Anya Taylor-Joy is taking over immediately, but there's a bit where it kind of seems like there's like I think it's Anya Taylor-Joy the whole time, but you don't really see her face, and she seems smaller than Anya Taylor-Joy actually is in real life. So it might be just a different actor with Anya Taylor-Joy's eyes put onto them. I'm not sure, but essentially it's an older Furiosa. We've skipped ahead in time. She's kept her head, or she's like kept her hair bundled up, and she's passing off as a man instead of as a woman to avoid being brought in as a wife for Morton Joe, which gross. And she's just working in the mechanics room for the Citadel, I suppose, building war rigs. And it starts with they are building the ultimate new war rig. That's what they're going to do. They're going to create a new war rig, and it's going to be the best war rig they've ever created. And so there's this cool time lapse where it shows them building it, and then a minute later, they're done. The coolest war rig ever made is done. This is where the pacing starts to get a little off, because up until this point, it has taken its time. It has established the characters. It has established the stakes, and I understand where everybody is and what's going on. And all of a sudden, there's a time jump, and they start to push very, very fast in order to get to the scenes they want to get to, and they're skipping a lot of story here. So we get introduced to this new character, who I have to look up his name, because he is the Imperator before Furiosa becomes Imperator. He's just some guy. God, what is his name? Do 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 do. God, this is terrible. He basically has her job before she has it. It's Tom Burke plays the character, and the character's name is Praetorian Jack. Instead of Imperator Furiosa, it's Praetorian Jack. So Jack is basically the person who has that job before she does. And he has the same like gas markings across his forehead that she does in Fury Road the whole time. And he's in charge of the war rig, and they like share a glance, I suppose, but we don't know anything about Praetorian Jack. They don't tell us anything about his character, which I suppose is fine, but really I would have liked more of a background, just a little bit, I suppose. Now, we get to the stowaway part, which I was talking about earlier. She hides on the war rig, which is headed towards Gastown. And for, I guess, that specific war rig's first run, it's that war rig specifically is going to Gastown for the first time, I believe. And she is stowed away underneath. And all of a sudden they get attacked by the man with the black stuff over his face. I don't remember his name, but he is attacking them. Oh, I guess he's the Octoboss. Here it is. So the Octoboss attacks them, whatever that is, with his band of motorcycle enthusiasts that have separated from Dementus. We learned very quickly they're no longer with Dementus, and so they are now just buzzards attacking anything out on the road. They attack the war rig, and there is an action sequence. This is the first big action sequence, if you ask me, that I think occurs. And I'm trying to get into it. I'm trying to enjoy it. I'm trying to have a good time. And I just can't quite enjoy it that much. It was the best action sequence. That was a straight action sequence, if you ask me. But something about it just looks worse. It doesn't feel as high octane as Fury Road. It feels like a bit of a letdown to me. I think it has something to do with a heavier, a not quite good blend of the CGI and the real life action that's happening. I wish it was blended better. I think it has potential. I think it's the closest to like a Fury Road action sequence. You have those smaller vehicles attacking a war rig, which is essentially what Fury Road is the entire time. So you get that kind of enjoyment out of it. The war rig looks a little different, has different gadgets to it. So you have more originality, which is great. And you have this Octoboss in a big octopus like flying machine that's attacking it, which is also a great little addition. But it kind of looks like the monster from the alien from Nope, if you've seen Nope. That's what it kind of looks like, but black instead of white. And it's chasing after everything down there. It doesn't, I think it was a music thing for me. There is music throughout the movie, but the music doesn't feel as amped and as pumped to get me going. And I feel like the thing that I noticed is that there is a lack of a drum beat in most of the score. It's a lot of strings playing along, trying to get like the tension high, but there's not really a big drum beat to really get my heart thumping. And that was a big draw of Fury Road, is they have that huge war rig on it with all the drummers on the back and the guitarist on the front. It was very heavy metal, and it was awesome, and it was intense, and it really amped up this war feeling to Fury Road. And this one felt, I think they were trying to go for a grander story, I suppose, as opposed to like an all-out action movie. but I don't think it sticks the landing in highlighting the stakes of what's happening and trying to get me on the edge of my seat and caring about these characters that I should be caring about as much as I wish that I was. Of course, the action sequence that I'm talking about is, in my opinion, the best one that's in the movie. I just could see myself liking it better had it been done a little bit differently, a little bit similar to, I don't want to say similar to Fury Road because I don't think it has to be. I think it's okay if it's different. I just wish it hadn't been this kind of different, I suppose. I don't really like the drama like being incorporated into the action sequence that they're trying to do because it's still a Fury Road-esque action sequence done as a Furiosa drama sort of way. And I wish there's like a disconnect there that doesn't quite land for me, in my opinion. I think it has to do with the music. I think it has to do with the editing. I think it has a bit to do with not caring as much about the characters. I don't know anything about Praetorian Jack. I don't know anything about the War Boys. Don't care about them. They're all just random War Boys. And the only character I care about is Furiosa. And inherently, I already know she's going to make it to the end because she's in Fury Road. So there's not a lot of stakes at play here. I think the stakes would come in with learning more about Praetorian Jack beforehand and wanting to root for him, but I just don't know him at all. And they kill the Octoboss, they kill everybody, but everybody dies except for Praetorian Jack and Furiosa. The only ones left. They have a weird back and forth with a gun where he kicks her out of the car and says, "Go wherever you want," and then he walks back and he's like, "Come with me. I need a new crew. Join me." And this is kind of like leading into how she becomes Imperator Furiosa. They show up to the gas town with the war rig, and this is the first time we see Dementis in maybe like 30 minutes of the movie. So there's like a good 30-minute gap where Chris Hemsworth is not in it, which is kind of disappointing because he was the character I wanted to follow the most. You know, he's the character that they made me care about the most and want to learn more about. And I'm so intrigued by him. I want to be with him for more of the movie. And they just took him away at the worst part. And so there's a huge gap where he's not in it. And then uh, what's I suppose worse is that by the time they get to gas town, it's falling apart because he can't control it, and that would have been really interesting to watch over that time period to see how it kind of unfurls and how he loses control of his people because he's not a wise man. He's not like a strong leader. He's a very much selfish, egotistical coward. I wish I could have seen more of that happen, and we just didn't get to see any of it. And so Furiosa sees Dementis. She still has a grudge against him. It's very obvious they show that. Dementis does not recognize her one bit, which is understandable. It's been like 10, 12 years since they've seen each other or something. And then they leave, and they know that Gastown is in shambles, and that's about it. And then I feel like I'm skipping something. All I know is that there is then a time jump. There's a bit where Praetorian Jack convinces Furiosa. That's what it is. I made a mistake. I'm remembering the order wrong. I think the original tow they're doing is to the bullet farm when they get attacked by the Octoboss, and then they go to the bullet farm or whatever. And after they get bullets, they say to each other, hey, you need to join up with me. We will be together, and you can learn how to drive the war rig, and you can be my second in command." And then there's like a time jump that they don't define, where she is now second in command. What is it? What is the time jump? I try to remember. I think they do go to Gastown, but I know the time jump is when they go to the bullet farm, and they go to the bullet farm, and they see the bullet farmer, and he gives Praetorian Jack a gun, and Jack gives Furiosa the gun and says, "This is yours. You can go now." But we've only seen them do 2 runs together. The first run where he recruits her, and the last run where he says that she can go. And we've skipped everything in between. When we know for a fact, this is where it becomes important, that the war rig is going to Gastown at least, not just the bullet farm, but Gastown at least every 10 days. So how many times did she do these routes? How many times did she go back and forth seeing Dementis every single time and just like learning the trick of the trade and being a part of the war rig? It just skips all of that drama. all of that connection she has with the Praetorian Jack, all of it is just skipped entirely. The character arc is just cut out entirely. And that is horrible. At this point, I am like very upset. I'm starting to feel a little bored. I don't really care about what happens because I know where Furiosa ends up. Dementis is barely in the movie anymore. I don't know anything about Praetorian Jack. I know all of the other characters, the Bullet Farmer, the People Eater, Immortan Joe, they all live by the end of the movie. So I don't really care what's going on. I want to care about the character. Like if you look at any good prequel, I think the best example is Better Call Saul. If you look at Better Call Saul compared to Breaking Bad, they have introduced us to a huge group of new characters that are all new and dynamic and exciting. They all have their own original arcs, and we want to see why are they not in Breaking Bad? What is the reason that they don't show up in Breaking Bad? Where does their story end in Better Call Saul so that it doesn't reappear in Breaking Bad? That's like the most exciting part of Better Call Saul is learning more about these new characters and how they interact with Saul, Jimmy McGill, and how they develop in the show so that they're not even in Breaking Bad, as well as their interactions with characters from Breaking Bad. And they don't do that in this movie at all. Like there are a lot of interesting characters in Fury Road that I'd love to see again. I'm glad we did get to see them again, but there's not enough new characters to keep me going to that have good arcs and whatnot. And I think that's the biggest fault of the movie. Because if you look at Fury Road, Furiosa has a good arc in that movie in the sense that she is trying to be the savior to take these women away and trying to return to her home at the Green Place. And Max has a good arc in the sense that he is a guilty road warrior who has blood on his hands and feels horrible about it as has let people down, and he's finally giving a chance to redeem himself, and he does so. Those are two very good arcs, but they're also very simple, and for the most part, they are focusing on the action. There's not a lot delved into it. It's just very, very straightforward. There is action. Those are the basic plot points, and they both accomplish their goals, but differently than how they imagined. In this movie, there aren't that many arcs other than Furiosa once again trying to get home, but failing along the way, and Dementis, who is trying to gain power and failing along the way. And Praetorian Jack has no arc. Morton Joe has no arc. None of the other characters really get enough screen time to even have an arc. So I feel like a lack of caring. I feel like a lack of interest in the characters that are in the story, and there isn't even enough action that I think is quality enough to keep me excited about continuing to watch what is a 2.5 hour movie. It is much longer than Fury Road. And I wish we had spent more time. Like if they were going to go the character arc route, I would have rather cut back on some of the action sequences that I didn't think were that thrilling, like the Bullet Farm fight, which we'll get to later, and focus more on the characters that they're going over. I would have liked more about Praetorian Jack and his relationship to Furiosa, especially because after their interaction at the Bullet Farm, they have this moment where she is showing him the stars and she says, "Come with me. We can go there together." He like tells her to go and she says, "Come with me." And they have like a moment where they hold each other and it feels almost romantic. Like, what is the relationship that they have? I don't understand because you didn't show any of it. You've shown me nothing. I just don't understand, and I don't care about Praetorian Jack at all because of that. Then we can cut to the Bullet Farm fight. They go to the Bullet Farm to do one last round of deliveries, and they're going to leave as soon as those deliveries. They're going to cut loose from the deliveries. They're going to abandon completely, like run out of Dodge. But when they get there, wrench in the plan. Dementis has attacked the Bullet Farm and taken over it. It is abandoned, but it's actually a trap, and they start getting attacked by Dementis' gang. That is exciting. That is a good twist. It is a good wrench in the plan. I just wish I cared about the plan to care about the twist. But the twist is good. That Dementis has taken it over. I enjoyed that. And so we had this action sequence that I don't particularly care for. I didn't think it was very exciting. It reminded me of the car chase in Spectre, if you've seen Spectre, where Dave Bautista is chasing Daniel Craig. They're both in cars. They're running through Rome, and there's no people or other cars on the streets. It is just two cars driving very fast down the roads. So there's no stakes. There's no danger. There's nothing going on. This is very similar to me. There's like a few reaction shots that the characters have, and they don't seem to have any emotions on their face, particularly Furiosa and Praetorian Jack. Dementis, Chris Hemsworth's going crazy with it. I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying his performance, but it doesn't feel like there's a lot of characters in danger to make especially because I don't care about them that much. I don't care about Praetorian Jack, but they are in danger, and I should care about them. I should want to care about them, and there should be higher stakes, and there aren't. They're shooting at each other and they're driving around, but there's not like action out the wazoo like I would have liked. Following the Bullet Farm fight sequence, they are driving in the desert, trying to get away. Dementis is chasing after them in this giant monster truck thing, and then he catches up to them and he like slams them down, and they speed off. And then there's a moment where he pulls them out of the car, and there all these people around him. It's like there is no hope. God, that is a great line. Chris Hemsworth gets the best lines in the movie. Ready, steady, go. There is no hope. All the lines he has in the trailer, which I wish he had more lines that we hadn't seen yet, but all of his lines that are great are in the trailer. And then a couple of lines at the end are also very good of his. But he gets the best lines, which of course he does. He gets the most lines. None of the other characters even talk that much. It's mostly just him talking. So of course he gets the best lines. Anyway, Furiosa gets strung up by her arm, which has been like severed almost, pretty much, and so she's hanging by it, and it's the arm that has the star map on it, and it is like rotting almost, like about to fall off. And Praetorian Jack gets tied to the back of a motorcycle and dragged around, and Dementis takes a breather because he's frustrated, he's angry, he needs a breath. And then the sun starts to set. It's been a few hours, presumably. They decide to stop. It's assumed that Praetorian Jack is dead because he got dragged around by a motorcycle and attacked by dogs, but they don't really show anything. They don't really objectively say that Praetorian Jack is dead. It's just kind of assumed. And then Dementis looks up, and all that is left is Furiosa's arm. She is abandoned. She's left her arm behind. This is the same arm that has the star map on it. And this is where I get upset. What was the whole point of the star map on her arm? Was it to help her get home? Because in Fury Road, she gets there, goes in the same direction pretty easily without the arm. What was the point of tattooing it on? Was it the hope that she had and now the hope is gone? If it was symbolic, I wish they had leaned into that symbolism more as opposed to making it seem like an actual plot point. I thought it was going to be important that she had this tattoo on her arm, and they didn't really explain it very well. And I thought that was very disappointing. Anyway, we cut to Furiosa returning to the Citadel. She tells the Immortan Joe and the people leader about Dementis' plan, and then this whole war breaks out of nowhere. It's like the 40-day war or something, and so they're just attacking each other in the desert nonstop. And all of a sudden, it feels like they are skipping through like the first 45 minutes of the movie. When Furiosa is very little, they are taking their time. They're explaining bit by bit what is going on. I'm enjoying it. It feels like I'm leading into like this epic Lawrence of Arabia type wasteland apocalypse sort of story, with Dementis being this father figure. It's almost like Vinland Saga in a way, where Dementis has killed her mother and is now taking her under his wing, or trying to, at least, calling her Little Dementis and wanting her to be this figure. And that would have been a very interesting dynamic if they leaned into that Vinland Saga sort of story. And they didn't. He just gives her up to Immortan Joe, which we knew was going to happen eventually because she becomes under his employ as the Imperator Furiosa. But still, I would have been much more intrigued in seeing her be with Dementis longer, like growing up with him for a longer period of time, instead of almost immediately into the movie, going and staying with Immortan Joe. Because then we would have gotten more Dementis, who's the most interesting character in the movie. We would have gotten more, like, a stronger relationship dynamic, because you spent 45 minutes setting up his character already. It feels like a waste to put him to the wayside and bring in a Praetorian Jack, who you then don't develop anyway, which feels like a waste. And then on top of all of this like character problems and story problems, I don't think that the action is very solid. I don't think I'm on the edge of my seat. I don't think I'm intrigued very much. I don't think I'm drawn into the action that's going on. And it is falling into a trap that is terrible for a movie to fall into. It is becoming boring. And there's nothing worse than a boring movie. There are times where this movie gets boring, and I hate to say that because it's Mad Max. It's the prequel to Fury Road. I want it to be exciting through and through, and it just kind of isn't, which is disappointing. Anyway, we cut to the end. The 40-day war is over. Furiosa is now chasing after Dementus. She's able to hunt him down on motorcycles, similar to how her mother hunted down Furiosa at the beginning of the movie, which is kind of an interesting parallel. And then she proceeds to torture him until he realizes who she is and how important she is, and have that realization. And Chris Hemsworth gets a lot of time at the end, and this is where it comes around for me. God, he steals the show again. He gets me interested. He makes me wish I had seen more of Dementus throughout the rest of the earlier parts of the movie, like the middle part, because he's saying these crazy things about how they are the same. This is the wasteland. We fight to survive. We do what we must. It's so intriguing to see it, and then she turns him into a tree. Which, I mean, I guess she did have the seed throughout the movie that was in her hair for most of it, that her mother had given her. I just wish it made more sense that she turned into a tree. I wish it had been more powerful, I suppose. But I think it's a very good, I think it's a good plot point. I just wish it had been like leaned into a bit more emphasis on that seed throughout the movie to make it stick a little bit harder about the irony of it, of him searching so hard for this green place of plenty of trees, of fruit, of all these great things, for him to die with a tree growing through him. I think that is like a good end for that character, and I wish they leaned a bit more into that. And then it does a weird thing at the end that I don't like very much. It it does two things out of this movie that I didn't like. It has a shot of Furiosa driving through the desert, or someone driving through the desert, and Mad Max is standing on a cliff watching it happen. I didn't like that. I wish Mad Max had not appeared at all. I don't know why he did. It felt like a weird cameo that wasn't even Tom Hardy. I didn't understand the point of it. And the second thing I didn't like is that it leads straight into Fury Road. It leads straight into her taking the women from Fury Road, and it's not actually them. It's just body doubles, of course, that you don't really see in the same way you don't see Mad Max. But still, it's like body doubles, and then she takes them, she hides them in the rig, and the last shot is them closing the hatch so they can drive out on the Fury Road, like exactly what Fury Road is. It leads pretty much straight into it, and I wish it hadn't done that either. I wish this story was taking place like at least a decade before Fury Road. I wish we understood that Furiosa, it just doesn't, like, the scope of Furiosa being taken from her home and being forced to work for the Imperator for Immortan Joe for so long isn't felt, because we skip through and we skip through and we skip through, and there's no montages to at least to explain this gap in time. It is just cut through nonstop, and I wanted to see more of like the impact of what it is. Why is it so impactful that she's there, stuck there, working for Immortan Joe for so long, knowing Dementus is alive and she's not doing anything about it? This man who killed her mother, this sort of revenge story that it could have been. It just isn't. The scope of it doesn't feel great. I just wish it was better, I suppose. There's not much else I can say, except the last thing I want to say is Rictus's brother, who is, I looked up his name, it's Scrotus, not Dickus. Scrotus, who does not appear in Fury Road, has no end in Furiosa. We just don't know what happens to him. It's just a thread unanswered. And I'm sure they wrote him out. I'm sure they killed him off or something. And they just cut the scene or whatever. And that is disappointing, because he's a big character in Furiosa. He's one of the biggest characters in this movie. And he's not in Fury Road at all. He should have gotten like a write out. They should have written him out somehow. And they just didn't, which is disappointing. So overall, I guess I would say, when thinking about this movie, I was let down. I like the idea. It's becoming a common trend that I see. I like the idea that this movie's going for. I just don't really like the execution and how they did it. I don't really like the follow through with not really developing ideas. It's just a common thread I see a lot in work that is often disappointing to me, is people coming up with good ideas and then not putting in the effort to follow through on those good ideas to make them work. The idea of Furiosa being a slower prequel that is like this more expansive sort of understanding of the wasteland, and more, and diving deeper into this background of the Citadel and the politics behind it, and then Furiosa herself and how she fits, this small puzzle piece fits into this, and slowly will turn into this big revolutionary figure for the Citadel in Fury Road. Seeing her be this tiny cog in this big wheel and slowly become bigger and bigger. It is a great idea and it is a strong idea for a prequel, and they just whiffed it. They missed completely, in my opinion. They had the idea, they had the follow through, they had this great character, Dementus, that they added in, and they just didn't stick the landing. I still had fun with learning more about the Wasteland. I always enjoy the aesthetic of the Mad Max movies. I enjoyed Anya Taylor-Joy's performance, even though it was very subdued and subtle and not in a lot of the movie, and she didn't really get much to say anyway. And I really, really liked Chris Hemsworth in the movie. I think he is one of the strongest parts of it. I think Dementus is a great addition to the movie. I just wish they could have included him more and given him more of an arc and like made him more of an important character than he already was. And I just wish the action had just been a little bit better. I wish it had been a little bit tighter. I wish there a little more thought had been put into it, a little more effort to make it distinct from Fury Road, but not like unenjoyable. Because this was just not very enjoyable through and through. It didn't feel organic. It didn't feel well thought out. It felt very rough a little bit. But overall, check it out if you want to. You know, it's possible you have a good time. I'm not really sure. Out of 5 warlords being pulled apart by motorcycles, I'm going to give it 3. 3 out of 5 warlords being pulled apart by motorcycles. Wish it could have been better. Unfortunately, it just was not. Very disappointing. I mean, a 3 is still not a bad score. I still had fun with it. I just wish I was expecting so much. My expectations were probably just too high, which is a problem. Oh well, what are you gonna do? That's all the time we have. If you'd like to give your thoughts on the show, you can email us at theboxofficeshowpod@gmail.com. Our main title theme for the show is Sundown by Joseph McDade. If you like the show, please give us 5 stars on whatever podcast app you're listening to, and be sure to tune in next week. Have a great rest of your day.